Hey everybody, Objectively Dan here, and I wanted to talk to you about energy. You see, energy is a pretty well-defined concept in physics, but outside of physics, people very often misuse the word. You'll hear phrases like bad energy in a room or spiritual energy when talking about ghosts or personalities. And the problem is, of course, that none of these ideas have anything to do with measurable physical energy, the type of stuff that people in physics actually talk about. There's no unit or vibes in the laws of thermodynamics. Okay, if someone claims to sense energy without having any way to detect or measure it, they're not talking about physics. What they're really doing is using scientific sounding words to describe feelings. And while feelings are real, that doesn't mean that they have anything to do with actual energy. But of course, I want to know what you think. You can give us a call because the show is starting right now. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Truth Wanted. I am your host, Objectively Dan. This is the live call-in show that happens every single week, Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Time, where we talk to people about what they believe and why. And if you'd like to call us, you can certainly do that. The number is 512-991-9242, or you can call it to your computer at tiny.cc/calltw. Truth Wanted is a product of the atheist community of Austin, a 501c3 nonprofit organization dedicated to the promotion of atheism, critical thinking, secular humanism, and the separation of religion and government. And every single week, I always try to have a special guest with me. This week is no different. It is Dr. Blitz joining me today. Dr. Blitz, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
What I like about you, Dr. Blitz, and I've been told to just call you Blitz, so we'll go with that, is that you are not only a real doctor. You're not one of those YouTube doctors. I mean, I guess you are a YouTube doctor also, but the doctor part's real. That's a real part of your name. Doctor in physics, not something that comes around every so often. I don't read a lot of doctorates in physics at the grocery store, so I'm excited to talk to you today and what you can tell us. And I have on a good authority that you are also a fan of Truth Wanted yourself. So happy to have you on and guest host with me.
Yeah, I appreciate it. No, it's a pleasure, and it's exciting. It's weird to have seen it so much on YouTube and then to be a part of it.
Yeah. So I'm on record for saying this. I said this before the show, but I've said this live as well. When we get calls about physics, in particular, and we call this out, right? The quantum mechanics stuff, probably my least favorite genre of calls, okay? Because they never go anywhere, and I don't think anybody ever moves their position once. I don't think it's ever happened. But you are the one person where quantum mechanic calls are probably going to be the best fit for the show, right? And obviously, probably anything to do with physics, right? So, I'm looking forward to having any kind of conversations that folks want to have. And I want to talk to you a bit more and tell the folks at home about who you are and what you do. But before we do that, Blitz, we have to talk about our question of the week, the Truth Wanted segment. We want the truth segment, that is. Last week, we asked you guys, what is something that you know, but you wish you didn't? And here were some of our favorite answers for that. Number 3 comes from Chuck Gatos, who says, something I know, but I wish I didn't. The toys I had as a kid would be worth thousands of dollars now if I hadn't unboxed them, right?
That's so disappointing.
It's a classic.
It's so true.
It's true. I'll tell you what happened recently is I actually did find my old Pokemon cards. And I looked through them and I'm like, none of these are worth grading, like, at all. So it was like, I had the joy of being like, oh, yes, I could do something with this. And it's like nothing. I don't even think I get like $100 off of that. So, it is what it is. Got to move on, right?
Yeah. And it's the same thing with Beanie Babies. They're really not worth anything unless you have one of like the ultra special ones, right? They're just toys.
Yeah, have you seen that picture of that couple that was like getting divorced or whatever, and they had to separate their Beanie Babies, and they had like the Beanie Babies on the floor in the courthouse? Like, that's awesome. I love that stuff. Yeah, definitely like a thing that was made to like be collectible and have value that just like didn't, as far as I know.
It didn't take off.
Yeah. You'd think it would, but nope, not really. But number 2 comes from Nemeth Z Sigmund, who says, I wish I didn't know how many sharks are thrown back to drown without fins. At least here we can discuss something that will be solved in X amount of years, but those animals will just die out for their aphrodisiacs they don't even have. Yes, that is true. They do defin sharks and do lots of nasty stuff to them. So not great. Not
this makes
great
me
stuff.
sad.
I know. Poor sharks. Hashtag veganism. Anyway, number 1 comes from Zach Reeds, who says, something I wish I didn't know. Some species of shark have 2 penises that open up like barbed umbrellas. So another fun fact about sharks for you, to lighten things up. And yeah, I kind of wish I didn't know that either.
I mean, closely related, all snakes have that.
Wait, really? That's the thing? It's with snakes too? Wait,
yeah, they're called hemipenes.
Oh, okay. I could make a joke, but really, do I need to? Do I need to? I don't think so.
I mean, it's your call.
I think it's kind of there. You know about the thing with echidnas, where it's like, don't they have like 4 penises?
Yeah, probably. Honestly, anything down under.
Makes me think of the Sonic the Hedgehog series a lot differently, knowing that information.
Oh, jeez.
But anyway, regardless of that, thank you all for this disgusting information that you've given us. I don't wish you well for granting it to me. Actually, I do. Thanks for contributing. Always like reading the comments that you guys have. The prompt for this next week is combine 2 conspiracy theories to make the ultimate conspiracy theory. Now, Blitz, you got any good ones?
Yeah.
For this?
Okay. So, the moon landing was real, except the moon is flat.
Ooh, okay. So, like, is the Earth still round?
The Earth's still round, yeah.
Earth's still round, but the moon is flat.
The moon is
That's
flat.
why you always see the same side.
Right. It's the same side. It's just going like this.
I like that. Yeah. I was thinking kind of in a similar vein where it's like the JFK assassinations were there to prevent people find out about the moon landings being fake, right? Like you can kind of chain some of those together,
Okay. That actually seems plausible though. They'll believe that.
Yeah, he was on his way to release it. He was like, no, we can't lie to the American people. And then yeah, there was actually, I guess the moon landings hadn't happened yet when he died. Now that I'm thinking about it. So that doesn't really work.
But the Apollo program was
there.
No, I guess did it start in 1967? Maybe.
Yeah, I think it's right. I don't know.
He was assassinated in 1965.
The thing is, if we're wrong, commenters will let us know about it. So we'll find out either way. But thanks again for your guys' comments. Prompt this week: combine 2 conspiracy theories to make the ultimate conspiracy theory. Leave your best comment below, and we might read it next week. Blitz, thanks so much for joining me again today on the show. So you are a doctorate in physics. Very cool, very, very cool. You got all the equations in the background. You're doing a lot of deltas in that equation. What is there? Is that something specific that's going on there, or is that just random noise?
No, so actually this background here, and I use it as my background on all of my social media, as like my logo, is it's actually just a photograph of a blackboard that I was working on with my PhD supervisor when I made my first social media like outreach account. I just took a picture and I'm like, that looks like cool math. Like it was actual stuff that we were actually working on. But I'm like, I'm just looking for some sort of like equation filled something or other. Oh, I have this because you know what you're doing. Like you're when you're working on a blackboard, you don't we have smartphones now. You don't need to copy down notes at the end of the day. You can just take a picture. And so I have a whole bunch of pictures of just blackboards like filling my phone. So I just grabbed one.
That's awesome. That's really cool. Are you able to tell us a little bit about the work you're doing now? I probably should have asked you that before the show.
Yeah. So I do a lot of things. Mostly, in some sense, technically I work in a mathematics department. So in some sense, I do something called mathematical physics, which is if you ask the mathematicians, they'll tell you that I'm a physicist. If you ask the physicists, they'll tell you I'm a mathematician.
Okay.
So my work is at the interface of the two. I work primarily in relativity, so general relativity, cosmology. I'm working on a few projects involving black holes. I also do some stuff in differential geometry. That's the mathematics side. Differential geometry is sort of the language of general relativity. So but in that sense, it's more of a pure mathematical thing. So what you're seeing behind me is a good example of differential geometry over here.
Great. Great. Do you get tired of explaining your job to people and then people making cutesy dumb jokes because they don't know things about your field, and then like, just trying to make dumb small talk with you? I'm sure that happens a lot with a degree like physics.
Maybe I just don't talk to enough people. But it doesn't happen very often.
Is it? Oh, okay. Well, I have to try to avoid me doing that right now, because I could make some dumb joke about any of this. Well,
nobody
the thing
will stop
is,
you.
Physics is, I mean, I'm much better at math now. I was one of those kids that really struggled with math. I ended up teaching math a few years ago, but point is, it's one of those fields where, man, I respect it so much, and literally everything I know about it is just what I've learned in high school and books on popular science that I've read. That's about it. That's about as much as I can contribute to that body of knowledge. And so when folks call in, again, talking about quantum physics or some other kinds of stuff, I'm just kind of like, yeah, that kind of sounds legit, or no, doesn't sound legit. It's just based on vibes mostly. It's not really based on any kind of firsthand experience or knowledge. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things that I've found, and not to toot my own horn a whole lot, is so like this whole science communicator thing that I've started doing, and what I'm doing right now, I guess technically counts, is that I found that I had to learn a lot more physics than I actually use in my day job. So in my day job, like it's obviously very specialized, right? Like, I have very specific projects that I'm working on. And so like, those are the kinds of calculations that I do. And that's the thing that I actually spend my time on. But like, if you ask me about superconductors, like if you had asked me 3 years ago, I wouldn't be able to tell you anything about them. But, because I've made content about them, and because, I am equipped to actually go read the papers, I've learned a lot more than about, all of the branches of physics that I otherwise wouldn't have known anything about. So it's definitely nice that I've gotten the opportunity to learn about all of these like wacky and wild things. I mean, I just wouldn't have ever thought that I would know anything about plasma physics of the sun.
Even after getting the doctorate, you still got to keep learning stuff, man. It just sounds exhausting.
So much.
There's
just so much. Well, no, but that's the best part, right?
Yeah, for sure. No, I think it's great. I think it's really wonderful. And let's talk about that, actually. Your YouTube channel, which is called Dr. Blitz. What are you doing on YouTube?
Yeah, so I mean, mostly reposting content from my TikTok channel.
Yeah, that's the meta these days. But yeah, I hear you. And
that's just because I started on TikTok. I also like multi-stream to YouTube and TikTok. I do debate call-in show 3 times a week, and then I also do some other science outreach in the form of live streams. I'm kind of keeping it as a reserve in case TikTok goes away,
Yeah, that's the smart thing to do. And when you're debating, folks, are you talking to a lot of pseudoscience people, or is it other physicists?
It depends on the day. Oh no. I mean,
no,
most physicists agree with me.
Yeah, I guess that's true. So you're not gonna have like hot takes in physics that are like too outlandish, right? Maybe.
Yeah, no, not so much. I mean, like mostly it's theism or flat earthers.
Okay, yeah.
Those are my favorite topics. So.
Wow, yeah, you are like so overqualified for the flat Earth debate. That's so crazy that like they have to get to you're the manager of the manager when they have to complain at the retail store when it comes to like what's going on in the world. That's crazy. That's so funny. Yeah. So and yeah, we talked about that a little bit. The flat Earth community, still a thing, still out there. What are they? Have you convinced anybody's mind talking to those guys?
I mean, you know how it goes. Whenever you're talking to people who are particularly entrenched, they're very, very hard to convince. But I definitely have convinced some people who come on and they're like, yeah, I just don't know. I'm not sure. And like these people who are on the fence, I've definitely, at least I hope that I've pushed them further and they'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. So, those people are definitely convinciceable, I think.
Yeah. What about other pseudoscience stuff? I'm sure you've heard it all through talking to people.
I mean, I've definitely engaged with moon landing denialism. That just falls out of the flat Earth stuff. I've also engaged with a lot of creationists, like young Earth creationists, a lot. And that also coincides pretty well with my field of study, cosmology being, the study of the history of the universe, if you will. I happen to know that field pretty well because I've written at least one paper in that subject. So it's those are, flat Earth, young Earth creationism, those are things that I'm particularly well qualified to speak on. So they're fun to talk about.
Yeah, I imagine. I would hope so. I mean, like for you, I mean, it must be like, I don't know, like taking candy from a baby, talking to some of these guys. You're just like, here, I can.
That way.
It's not only like, I'm knowledgeable about this subject. Look, I'm going to write I'm going to put it in math terms how wrong you are. Like that's how exacting you can be with people. That's an incredible superpower. I'm jealous of that.
The way that I got started, actually, doing any of this at all was talking with flat earthers. And my go-to thing would be like, okay, well, let's just work it out. And I'd grab a piece of paper, flip my camera upside down, and just start working it out on a piece of paper. And then usually they would just stop listening after about 30 seconds. And so I stopped doing that. Yeah,
I know how that goes for sure. But I imagine you must get some enjoyment out of it since you keep doing it, right? Is it for you? Is it just wanting to educate people? What motivates you to make the content that you do?
I mean, I'd be lying if I said it's not sometimes fun to dunk on people who
you want to get some dunks in, little petty.
Like that's good. But also, like when I was in grad school, I had the opportunity to like teach a bunch of physics classes to like proper engineering students, and that was a delight. And then I finished grad school, and I didn't get to teach anymore. I'm in a pure research position now, and so it does kind of scratch that itch of being able to enter into like lecture mode and tell someone about angular momentum or something. So
so you enjoy the teaching parts of it.
Yeah, I do.
As well. Yeah, that makes sense. What would be the one thing you wish everybody would know about physics that not everybody seems to understand? Maybe a big misconception.
Let's say that I would say that quantum mechanics isn't really spooky. It's just hard math.
Yeah. Okay. Can you explain that a bit more?
Yeah. So there's like this, like people have like, there's this meme about like the double slit experiment. And it's like, well, if you look at it, then it behaves like a particle. And if you don't look at it, it behaves like a wave. And like, sure, that's like, if you were trying to explain it to a 6-year-old, that might be a good way to explain it. But none of us are 6 years old here. It's all that's happening is that there's there's a nice description of why that happens. Essentially, when you look at it, you're measuring it, you're doing something to it. And so when you do something to it, it's going to change the way it behaves. Yeah. Because it's like throwing a baseball at if you throw a baseball at a basketball, the basketball is going to move. It's going to change. Right. And so like all of these things that are, super, super esoteric and confusing and mystical, like, no, it's just math. It's linear algebra. There are a few open questions in quantum mechanics, like at the foundations of stuff, but that's not what most people are talking about when they say it's like spooky, mystical vibes. Like it's just math.
Yeah, that drives me crazy too, because like I think people get caught up on the you part of that when you look at it, and they think it's like a literal person's eyes on a thing is making it change. And I think that throws people off. It's like, no, like obviously they're making observations through. Like if a photon is bouncing off it to make an observation, like that's what it is. It's the act of observation. It's not like your soul is interacting with the particle, which is like what a lot of people really think quantum mechanics. Like an entire niche book industry has been made from this, right? Like it's kind of insane.
It's like grifty too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's the other thing. Vibrations.
Ooh, yeah.
Not really as fundamental as you think. Like they're important, but like also other things don't just vibrate. Some things like just move in a direction and they're not vibrating, right? So
yeah. Any thoughts? So that ties in maybe like string theory stuff too. Do you have hot takes on like string theory? Because that comes up as well.
Yeah, I don't think it's a hot take to say that I don't know if I buy string theory. But what is a hot take is I think it should still be funded. I think it's still useful to investigate and think about.
Okay. What makes it useful if you don't think it's legit?
So the trouble is the string theory is a solution. It's a proposed solution to the problem of quantum gravity. And this is the thing that we haven't it's been like the biggest open problem in physics since like the 50s. And the thing is string theory is it is a genuine self-complete theory of quantum gravity. The thing is it just might not be the theory of quantum gravity for our universe. If we had lived in a different universe, then maybe it would have been correct. But the point is it's self-consistent. So however quantum gravity is, we might be able to learn something about how what the actual theory of quantum gravity is by looking at how string theory is. It's the only example that we have of like an actual consistent theory of quantum gravity. So we can at least learn something qualitative from it.
Okay, that is the most succinct way I think anyone's ever explained the usefulness of string theory there. That's pretty good. Pretty good. You must do this for a living. You must teach about this all the time.
It's almost like I do.
That's crazy. That is awesome. No, it's so funny. Again, just like talking about all this stuff, I feel like, we're on the same page here. I'm on the lookout for grifters. Okay. And like, for some reason, and you counter this because you're on TikTok, like this field of study, despite being so exacting and probably people spending the most time just like doing all the hard work of actually, writing the equations, understanding what's happening, like they get the short end of the stick every single time. Like it's not folks like you that are getting all these book deals and the big public speaking tours on energy, healing or whatever. It's like, it's always the worst people, or don't know. And that just makes me sad. I don't know.
Yeah, so I spend some time doing debunking videos on TikTok. It's unfortunately one of my most popular TikTok genres of video to make because sometimes I just like to make videos about something cool rather than shutting down a terrible idea.
Right.
And yesterday I made one about Masters of Self University that teaches quantum healing. Or quantum something or other.
Right.
They charge $444.44 for a 1 hour consulting or for a 1 hour quantum healing session, which it's grifting at the highest level. Like it's so frustrating.
Jeez. Yeah, that's so bad. Yeah, I can understand, right? Because like you want to teach about, hey, here's these other cool and new interesting things, and people probably ask you the same 5 questions every time, right? And probably me doing a little bit of that right now by asking you some of the hot topics. And like, and there's also all these other obviously pathological liars and or grifters or whatever out here doing their stuff. I can at least say that you are doing a public service to folks that I can't fulfill, because if I can tell people these are grifters all day, but that's just my opinion. At least you have the credentials to be like, no, we got to shut this down. Exactly. You got it. I mean, that's a public service in my mind. So I do, even though you say it's not your favorite thing to make, I appreciate that you do.
Well, okay, so it is very fun to make. It's very satisfying. But like, at the end of the day, what if I want to talk about like, I don't know, solar flares or something? Well, nobody's going to make a grifty video about those, so I have to go do that myself.
Yeah. Speaking of solar flares, we might have something in that ballpark in a call in just a second here. You want to talk to some callers?
Sure.
Okay, cool. Before we do that, folks, we have to thank the patron of the week, because every single week I'm always giving a shout out to you guys on the Patreon. I, of course, want to thank everybody that donates on the Patreon. This week's patron of the week, though, is going to be, waiting for it, Fortuna Ex Machina. Thank you so much, Fortuna Ex Machina, and thank you to everybody that donates. Go to tiny.cc/Patreon TW if you want to support the show and become a patron of the week. And with that out of the way, let's get to our first caller here. Oh man, we had a good one. There we go. They've just taken him out of the screening room. Let's talk to Steve calling in from Nebraska. Steve, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Yeah, hey, Dan and Dr. Blitz. Happy weekend, everyone. Thanks for allowing us this opportunity to discuss a recently published paper titled The Spider Stellar Engine, a fully steerable extraterrestrial design, authored by astronomer Dr. Clement Vidal, that claims binary star system PSR-J-1641-8049, which consists of a millisecond pulsar, a lower mass companion star, is deaccelerating due to an artificially generated force induced perhaps by an electromagnetically charged Dyson ring or magnetic cell around the orbital plane of the pulsar, whereby the pulsar stellar wind is being redirected in order to reduce the irradiation of the pulsar's companion star, resulting in the reduction of the stellar system's propellant thrust, thereby slowing down the travel velocity of the star system on approach towards close encounter with another star system purposed for replenishing the depleted energy resources of binary star system PSR J1641-8049.
All right.
So
Okay. I feel, Dr. Blitz, you got to start writing this stuff on your blackboard here because I'm having trouble keeping up with this call. Let's slow down a minute, Steve. Let's get everybody on the same page here. First of all, Blitz, do you understand what's happening? Do you understand what he's talking about here? Because
So it seems like what's happening is that there is a fairly nearby star that has some strange, my guess is spectroscopic signals. And one potential explanation is extraterrestrial design. Am I understanding that properly, Steve?
Well, there's this pulsar that is slowing down, and I think according to the law of inertia, right, an object that tends to stay in motion will remain in motion unless there's an outside force counteracting that, right? And in space, what's there to slow down a pulsar?
Yeah. So
well, there's nothing.
I mean, in general,
there's no natural forces, so therefore aliens, right? Aliens are driving.
Oh,
we can see this.
There are probably more
pulsar slowing down.
There are probably less exotic solutions, and I would be remiss if I pulled up the paper, but I haven't read the paper. I would be very, very surprised if the authors didn't propose other possible explanations as well. Most responsible physicists, most responsible astronomers, when they say anything about extraterrestrials, usually in their discussion or conclusion section, they'll say, it could be X, Y, Z, A, B, C, or maybe aliens. And so, but it's the aliens that catch the headlines.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to just right away say, hey, even though this looks like it could be aliens, but I'm not going to jump the gun and say, I mean, maybe, perhaps it's possible they need to observe this more. It could be a measurement error. I mean, I've seen that happen, right? That's a possibility. And maybe this isn't slowing down in the way that they think. So they need to do further observations. And I want James Webb Telescope to take a look at this, because if this is slowing down on approach to another star system, that's awfully peculiar, right?
Well, so if it's a pulsar, pulsars emit radio waves. So James Webb won't really be able to tell you much, unless it's also emitting, I guess, in the infrared, which, it could be depending on what it is and depending on what's nearby. But yeah, I mean, look, this seems to have come out, a few months ago. So sure, it very well could be a legitimate signal, probably warrants further investigation. But, I would be very, very careful to make any sort of assessments about aliens just yet.
Okay, well, there's further evidence of extraterrestrial technological signatures. The fast radio burst designated as FRB 2024-0, I believe 0209A, are apparently artificially generated radio beams used in propelling an ancient alien starship light sails, rather than these fast radio bursts.
Steve, according to who? Wait, who's saying that these are artificially generated bursts that are powering solar sails?
And Morris of Langham. Avi Loeb had predicted the frequency at which a signal would radiate.
So here's the thing about Avi Loeb.
Happening at that frequency.
Here's the thing about Avi Loeb. Avi Loeb is a very well-respected scientist. The other thing about Avi Loeb is that he sometimes has very fringe theories that go nowhere, and he really, really likes aliens. So, if you read any of his papers and they're not about aliens, totally well regarded. You should absolutely read them. They're generally very well written. If it mentions aliens in the paper, maybe give it a little bit more of a grain of salt, if you will.
Okay, well, the source of this FRB, this fast radio, supposed fast radio burst, has been point-pinned to the distant edge of an ancient galaxy where magnetars can no longer exist. And since February 2024, FRB 2024-0209 has been detected reoccurring on 22 separate occasions by the Canadian Hydrogen Intensity Mapping Experiment radio telescopes. This signal's reoccurring nature implies that this is not caused by a rapid one-time events such as gravitational collapse or collision of neutron stars. However, FRB 2024-02098 radiates at the optimal frequency for light cell propulsion, as proposed by Avi Loeb's research article titled "Fast Radio Bursts from Intergalactic Light Cells," published in Astrophysical Journal Letters on 2 January 2017. Hence, this is indeed probably likely of technologically advanced extraterrestrial origin. So we have these technical signatures of these.
You got to be really careful. You have to be super careful with any claims with probably. I mean, maybe it is, but you have to be super skeptical of these things, because one data signal for a particular source will never be enough to confirm extraterrestrial intelligence, right? You'll need multiple different corroborating pieces of data that are independent and point to the same thing. Then maybe you're right. I mean, like, look, the universe is probably not empty, but generally it's believed to be pretty sparsely populated. So just be a little bit skeptical about these kinds of things. Avi Loeb tends to write a lot about aliens. He's been wrong a lot. He thought that Oumuamua was an alien spacecraft. He thought that there was alien pebbles at the bottom of the ocean. He's made a lot of claims before, and like, he's a theorist. So he comes up with theories, and as our job as theorists is to come up with wacky theories that are potentially good explanations, but that doesn't mean they're always right.
Yeah, and Steve, I believe you called in a week or two ago also talking about Avi Loeb, because you mentioned about the meteorite that they supposedly found that was also like alien in origin. And I did some more reading after you called me about that and found that the way that they did that was he paid $1 million for these submarines to get drag nets across the bottom of the ocean. And they found this one piece, which other reputable scientists say is ash, and not actually from space or extraterrestrial origin at all. But the claim was that not only is this extraterrestrial origin, but it happened to be a fragment of the meteorite that he was looking for, which is, I gotta say, pretty preposterous when you understand how big the ocean is and how small of an actual area. It was like a 10-kilometer square mile area, which is like, in ocean terms, nothing. So you seem to put a lot of stock for Avi Loeb, Steve. I don't know. He seems to have captured your imagination.
He's got vials of the remnants of this interstellar one meteor, and it's been tested, and it's extremely rich in beryllium, lanthanum, and uranium, hundreds of times more than what you find on an Earth rock or anything like it in our solar system. And the fact that it's heavy in beryllium is important, because what happens is a process called I think it's called something like spladium, where it's chipped out from the where the heavier elements are chipped out, or the beryllium's chipped out from the nuclei of heavier elements by the impact of high energy cosmic rays. And in our solar system, we're protected by the solar wind, but in interstellar space, this is going to happen. So this material he has is clearly outside from our solar system.
It would be if I guess
got the smoking gun evidence for the chariots of the alien sky gods.
I guess if you believe everything he says to be true, yeah, but I have trouble, and other people who have more research than I am, who've examined that evidence, also have trouble believing those claims. Blitz, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, so the thing that you were looking to try to, the thing that you said was, you were talking about spallation, known as nuclear spallation.
Thank you, I didn't know what it was called. Yeah, that's it.
So nuclear spallation occurs, just for those who don't know, nuclear spallation occurs when you have a cosmic ray, which is like just a particle coming from space, that hits a big heavy atom, and then it breaks apart the nucleus. And so usually it'll knock off like a small chunk of that nucleus. So you'll get like a helium atom knocked off, or a helium nucleus knocked off, or sometimes a beryllium nucleus knocked off. The thing is this happens on the surface of Earth all the time, because we have cosmic rays all the time hitting Earth. In fact, there's a process called cosmogenic radionuclide dating, or nuclide dating, which basically relies on the fact that this is a process that happens on the surface of the Earth. So you have cosmic rays that hit rocks on the surface of the Earth that makes them radioactive, and then we can date how long they've been decaying. And this is a useful way to figure out how old the surface of the Earth is. But importantly, this is the thing that happens on the surface of the Earth. So to say that it can only happen in interstellar space is just not true.
Okay, but the remnants of this extraterrestrial space junk that Avi Loeb had recovered was dated because it has isotope ratios of uranium and I believe lead. So they're able to date this, radiometric date this, and this dates to an age older than the solar system itself. This material Avi Loeb has is clearly beyond our solar system. It is unlike anything seen in our solar system. And this looks to me like it's somebody else's space junk that somehow found its way here before crashing into Earth.
Again, like, I think we kind of already talked about this. Like, there's just people that really contest the idea that the dating methods used for that particular chunk were accurate. I read several criticisms of the exact work that Avi Loeb did for that, and why it's most likely not what he claims it to be at all. And to be honest, that's what I have to go off of, right? I haven't seen it myself. I'm certainly not qualified to look at it, even if I did have it in front of me. I just wonder, Steve, why is it that you're so convinced that this guy absolutely has to be telling the truth about all of this stuff when numerous people have already come forward and rightfully criticized some of the claims that he's made with this? Because you seem very, very convinced that this is it.
He's going to come out with a paper countering his criticisms. And I understand he's going to, I hope he does a GoFundMe for another expedition, so we can get more pieces of this wreckage. It is a small sample size. I think they do need to collect a larger sample of this space junk from beyond our solar system and see exactly what's going on here. So I hope he gets that work done.
But like you're saying, he's going to write a paper to counter the criticisms. So, but like, you haven't heard, like, what are the counters to his criticisms? Like, are you saying that all of these critics are wrong? Like, is that your take? Like, why do you believe him over not believing him?
Because he's the one that has the material. He's the one that's tested it, looked at it. So he would, but he has the firsthand evidence. He's got possession of this, and I would like to see it independently confirmed, of course. So this is just material I think that was just recently recovered. So he probably wants time to go over and look it over, and then I'm confident he'll have it independently examined. But I don't think that's been done yet. This is all new news.
I guess that's fair, Steve.
For less than a year.
I don't know. How many times does somebody have to be wrong about something before you start to not trust them, though? Right? Like, I think
he only has to be right once. If he's right once, and we are not alone. We have there are advanced extraterrestrial things, and then another signal. How do you explain that within our genetic code, all the amino acids that can be sufficiently defined by their codon's first and second base nucleotides, when you take their computational atomic masses and you factor out 37, you get a perfect mathematical expression of an Egyptian triangle. And that's in the wow signal of the terrestrial
aliens, Steve. I mean, got to be aliens.
DNA.
Yeah. No, that's it.
What is an Egyptian triangle?
Yeah. What's an Egyptian triangle?
Yeah. Okay. It is a right angle, 90-degree triangle with ratios of 3, 4, and 5. And if you take the core,
that's a Pythagorean triangle.
Yeah.
And you take their atomic masses, and you take the core component, the side component, and the total atomic masses, and you factor out 37, you get 3 squared plus 4 squared equals 5 squared. In our
Steve, we're out of time. I'm sorry. This is a whole other topic of discussion. And you know what? When we have a biologist on, they can argue with you about, the codons and stuff. And I'd like to hear it then. But I've got all the time I got for you now today, unless Blitz, you had anything else you wanted to add before
I don't even know what a codon is.
Yeah,
I do,
different field of study, right? We're not even on the same thing anymore. But Steve, next time you can call in and we can talk more about that. I would Google motivated reasoning.
Good
Because
advice.
I think that's kind of what's happening here. I think you started with the conclusion that aliens are definitely a thing. And if you look at the world through that lens, yeah, you're absolutely going to find some stuff. But I just don't know if that's the best way to know true things, right? I think that's the fairest thing I can say. I don't know. What did you think about that call?
Look, I think that there are probably other things that are alive in our universe. I don't think that we're alone. But I think that Steve will probably be a bit disappointed when we find out that the first non-Earth life that we find will probably be bacteria.
Yeah. That's something that we've talked about on this show a lot. It's probably going to be really small and probably not too complex. But hey, I guess, anything's possible, right? You only got to be right once. That's an interesting way to look at the world.
It's true, though.
It's true, but that's not a great way to live your life. I don't know.
No, it's not.
I don't think so. Like L. Ron Hubbard, I don't think he could be right about like one thing. I don't need to hear everything else he's got to say. You know what I mean? Like, don't think that's going to be good for my life. I think you could say that about a lot of people. And maybe Avi Loeb is one of those guys. I don't know. But from what I've learned more about him, it doesn't seem like he's going to be convincing me anytime soon of the claims that he's made. Before we get to our next caller, let me get you some quick announcements real quick, folks. One is our merchandise. Hey, if you want to help support the show and do that through wearing it, you can do that. We've got t-shirts, hoodies, and also some other stuff, mugs, even backpacks now, and notebooks. I would say, get it for back to school. Literally the worst. I don't think there's no school to go back to right now. I think everyone's in the middle of school, whatever. If you want a notebook and it wanted to say truth wanted on it and have people wonder if you're a conspiracy person or if you're just a fan of the show, that's the way to do it. Another way to support us is through super chats. And if you put your super chat in and if it's YouTube appropriate, we will read them when we get to them. In fact, we have a super chat from earlier. One was from Laren Misha Sadeh, who gave $5. Thanks so much for that. And said, what's the intersectionality of a doctorate in physics and knowing about snake umbrella genitalia? And that is a damn good question. Blitz, can you comment to that effect?
Look, so I have so I read a lot on Wikipedia.
Yeah.
I read a lot just in general on the internet. And I have a very, very peculiar memory for things that are about the natural world. I have a very, very good memory for that. The downside is that I have ask my wife, I have a horrible memory of like any event that took place in my life before like 3 weeks ago. So, ups and downs, I guess, but I can tell you about snake penises.
Yeah, you got to make room for the snake penis facts.
Exactly. That's an important piece of information. Definitely more important than like who was in my wedding party. No, I think I remember who was in my wedding party.
Oh man, he said think with that, so I don't know. But man, that's really fun. I'm the same way. It's like, God, if I could just use all the brain space I have to remove the original 151 Pokemon Pokedex and just know where my goddamn keys are, like that would be great. But we are the way that we are, I guess. I don't know. Don't know how to solve that. We're gonna have to consult some quantum healers to fix our memory or something.
That sounds about right.
On that. Yeah. One other thing before we keep going, I want to thank the awesome crew that helped make this show happen every single week. And we got a crew cam up showing who up. It is the crew, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for doing what you do and working behind the scenes. And shout outs to our backup host. I usually say at the end, but I'll do it now. We got Kelly hanging out in the back, and Kelly was having some internet issues. So we got AJ also in the backup for our backup. How deep will we go? Probably about that far. I don't think we'll go any further, but shout outs to AJ for call screening and being backup for tonight. So thanks so much for that. With the Green Day shirt too.
Oh yeah, always, it.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good stuff. All right, so let's get back to our calls, shall we? We are going to talk to Catholic Traditionalist calling in from Louisiana. You love to see it. Let's find out what we're talking about. Hello, Catholic Traditionalist. You are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hello there. How you doing? You could just abbreviate it by calling me CT.
Sounds good, CT. Appreciate it. How can we help you today?
Yeah, ontological intelligibility proves God.
Okay. What does that mean?
Yeah, so let's say I define God as an intelligent agent, in other words, the thinking being that instantiates and imposes all states of affairs, eternal, meaning he doesn't have any beginning. Well, not with regards to all things, but the set of all things that you perceive to exist. Would you agree that ontologically, all those things have the nature and being of being intelligible? In other words, you're able to understand them at a basic level. Like, for example, let's say you've never heard of atoms or molecules, but you are able to perceive that there's a table in your kitchen. So it's a basic level of understanding. You would agree that you at least have a basic level of understanding with regards to these things, right?
I don't know that I can even say I have a basic level of understanding of where this argument is going, to be honest with you. I mean, like, I can understand, some things may be simpler than other things that may be contained within the set of the same thing, I guess. I don't know how we get to God from that in any way. I mean, we can define sets all day. I'm sure Blitz can tell you even more about set theory than I ever could, right? But like, I just don't see why suddenly God appears and all that.
Okay. Well, could I just get an answer to my question?
I don't know if I even. The set of my answer is empty. Okay, so that's what you're getting there. I don't have any answer for you. I don't know. Blitz, do you have an answer?
You don't know whether you're able to understand things on a basic level. Then how is it you're perceiving these things?
I mean, that is not really what you asked. Do I understand things at a basic level? Is such an ambiguous.
That is what I asked. Yeah.
It's such an ambiguous statement that doesn't really mean anything. What does it mean to understand things at a basic level? My understanding of what something could be at a basic level is going to be different from what a 5-year-old understands at a basic level or what my cat understands at a basic level. So that in itself doesn't really tell me anything.
I would say that I understand what a table is.
Things. Yeah, how are you able to perceive things if you're not able to understand them at least at a basic level?
People perceive things without understanding them all the time. What do you mean? You don't have to understand anything to have
name something
eyes.
That you perceive without having a basic understanding of it.
Well, again, my cat sees my computer and doesn't understand anything about how that computer actually works. It just sees an object. What are we going with that?
Well, hold on. I said basic understanding. Sir, I said basic understanding. So that would mean your cat sees something and is perceiving something. So obviously, if it's a basic understanding, it doesn't mean your cat has to know all the workings of the computer now, does it?
Again, I don't know what basic understanding means. If you mean, can my cat see literal objects? Then yeah, sure. I don't think that means they understand anything. I think they're just seeing an object. I think we just have to be very careful with our words here.
So it can see an object, right? Okay, so then it's
I can see objects. I won't argue with you there. I can see objects.
Yeah, so it sees an object, and let's say a dog is chasing it. So it sees an object, so it knows to at least dodge that object, right? It has a basic understanding that there's an object there that it has to dodge, right?
I mean, it can observe cause and effect relationships, sure.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. With regards to the table in your kitchen, even though you may not have ever heard that tables are made up of atoms and molecules, you at least understand at a basic level that there's a table in your kitchen, right?
I mean, I can see that. Yeah, I can see there's a table in my kitchen. Yeah.
Okay, so then that's all I'm talking about. I don't know what's so hard about that.
Well, because this is so using basic understanding is very ambiguous. And what happens with a lot of these kinds of arguments is that you end up using like these weasel words. That's what it's called, right? Where you kind of start to define something in one sense and then use it in an argument, even though the word might be used in a different sense at another part of the argument, which tends to happen a lot with ontological arguments, right? Especially since ontological arguments are so dependent on defining words. I'm just surprised that you wouldn't want to approach this with the utmost clarity.
Well, I think I've been very clear. I mean, I've given you numerous examples, which I think any normal human being would say, oh, yeah, that makes sense. So I don't know.
I think I'm a normal human being, and I was struggling a bit with what you were trying to tell me. So I don't know if that's true. Yeah, maybe I'm at the bottom of the bell curve. I don't know, man. You tell me. Yeah, I speak to hundreds of atheists on social media, and none of them has ever had any problem understanding what I've said with regards to having a basic understanding of things. You're the only one so far. Okay, I'm fine with that.
So let's say that we agree that with the right definition of basic understanding, that yeah, we have a basic understanding of the things around us, like tables and chairs and cats and dogs and cars and trees. What next?
Yeah, so since you have a basic understanding of that, because you're able to perceive it to some degree, then the characteristic of the thing itself is that it's understandable. Do you agree with that?
I don't know if understandable is a characteristic of a thing.
Yeah.
I think that seems to be a characteristic of a relationship between a thing and an observer.
Right. Yes, I agree. Like all observable things are sort of interfacing with our senses, right? And so like we can come up with concepts that don't necessarily reflect, the real world. Like so Egyptian triangles, for example. I don't know. But yeah, there's all kinds of things that can exist in the abstract that may not. Like when we interact with software every day on our computers, I could see a picture of a house, but that doesn't actually give me information like it would if I was looking at a real house, right? So I don't know. I think like I don't think the characteristic in of itself thing really works with me on that level.
Now, how are you able to describe anything outside of yourself if these things themselves don't have ontological characteristics?
Well,
nobody
I don't
said
think
they don't have ontological characteristics. Yeah. All that was said is that they don't have this particular property of understandability.
Now, it is
no.
Okay, so
no,
then
I'm not saying
they do have characteristics ontologically, correct?
No, I'm not saying that. I think people have shared concepts or similar. I think people have similar enough concepts that they can share and interact and engage with these ideas. But I don't think we have to talk about objects in of themselves having characteristics. I think people can have their own mental models to describe the world.
I mean, this is a question of ontology, right? Like, like you can compare like substrate theory. You can talk about bundle theory. Yeah. So this is like a whole question of and I'm not a philosopher in any sense of the words, but like I know a little bit, and so like there's a whole bunch of other different theories of ontology. So if you're asking us which ones do we subscribe to, like, I guess that's a conversation to be had, but I imagine that you have a particular one you're driving at.
Well, I just want to know what you guys believe. Do you believe that there are things that exist outside of yourself that have characteristics that you're capable of describing?
I don't have a theory of ontology that I'm 100% sold on.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult.
So then you don't know whether you're able to describe a triangle? Like if you're looking at a triangle and you want to describe it to your friend, they're not looking at it, but you want to describe something that's in front of you. Do you believe that you would be able to describe that thing that's in front of you to your friend?
Yeah, probably. But that might be a result of shared experience. It might be a result of something intrinsic to the system itself. It might be a result of the relationships between me and the system. It could be a whole lot of things. I mean, like, personally, I kind of lean towards some sort of like bundle theory or something sort of between substrate theory and bundle theory. So like, I tend to, like, I'm a physicalist, so I tend to think that there are at least like some features of reality that we're accessing with our senses, but not everybody thinks that.
Okay, so let's work with that. So then you believe there's an outside world outside of your mind that you're accessing with your senses, correct?
Yes.
And you believe that outside world, there are particulars with regards to that outside world, and they have characteristics, correct?
Yeah, sure. I lean that way anyway.
Okay. And those characteristics are not dependent upon you by their very nature. In other words, if you popped out of existence, they would still have those characteristics, right?
That's a very hard question. Namely, the question is whether or not properties exist on their own, or if they are features of minds interacting with things that have ontological status. So generally, I'm some sort of like, I'm generally kind of skeptical of like properties having like their own ontological status on top of like the thing itself. But again, I don't have like a fully fleshed out ontology that I'm 100% convinced of. Suffice it to say, I'm skeptical of this idea that properties exist without minds, you know, kind of observing or detecting or measuring them.
Well, I don't disagree that you would need a mind to go ahead and perceive the thing, but with regards to the characteristics themselves, let's say there's not a mind that's observing the thing itself. Do you believe that that thing itself ceases to have characteristics? Like, for example, if you walked out of the room, the kitchen, does the table no longer have characteristics of a table? And only when someone else walks into the room, then the table all of a sudden magically now has characteristics of a table?
So again,
is that what you believe?
No concrete theory here, but the idea here is something like characteristics or properties are defined by a mind, meaning that they don't exist absent minds to begin with. So like you might perhaps you think it sounds absurd, but like if you just view properties as like a thing that minds do, then it's perhaps not that absurd. But anyway, why don't you actually, like, it would be good if you actually just presented the syllogism that you'd like to make, because otherwise it's going to take us a long time and we don't have time for that.
Yeah.
Yes, I just find it strange that you atheists have such strange beliefs with regards to things that are outside of your mind. I don't really speak to many atheists that believe the way you guys believe. Very strange.
I mean, nominalism is definitely a thing. I don't know why you haven't encountered.
So
yeah, like I don't know why you haven't encountered other atheists that are also nominalist. I think, like, by and large, probably most nominalists are atheists, if I were to guess. And I mean, you know, but that's purely speculation.
I've ever spoken to admit that these things that exist outside of a person's mind have characteristics in and of themselves, and that we're simply perceiving those characteristics. But you guys apparently don't believe that, so that's a little strange that you don't believe that. Kind of sounds like you live in sort of la-la land. But okay.
Yeah, that's right. We live in la-la land.
Characteristics of things outside of oneself. That since they have the characteristic of being understandable, otherwise you wouldn't be able to perceive them. Then all these things are simply nothing more than information that you're perceiving. And that information has to have the characteristic of understandability. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to perceive it in the first place. So, it does exist ontologically in regards of yourself, because if you were to cease to exist and somebody else came along, they would see what you were seeing. Like, for example, if you were looking at a sphere on the left-hand side and a cube on the right-hand side, the other person that walks into the room would see a sphere on the left-hand side and a cube on the right-hand side. If they're in their right mind, unless they're on drugs or something, they wouldn't see a monkey playing drums. So that means that the things outside of one's mind has these characteristics ontologically, irregards of any mind in the universe. Since they have this characteristic of understandability, that invokes the metaphysic of intelligibility. Intelligibility itself, would you say it's a concrete thing or abstract thing?
What do you mean by that, intelligibility of itself?
Concrete thing is like something physical.
I know what concrete things are. I don't know what you mean when you say is intelligibility a thing of itself. Is it concrete? Like, I don't know what you mean by that. What's your
No, I
understanding of
posed
the
a
word
question. I didn't make a
intelligibility?
statement. The question: do you believe intelligibility is a concrete thing or an abstract thing? That's a question, not a statement.
Again, I don't know what I guess abstract, if I'm gonna go
Wait a
with
minute.
this.
Just before you
Okay.
can, just before we
Okay,
continue,
so with regard
Yeah.
to
I thought I did ask you to just make the syllogism rather than asking questions. Otherwise, this will take forever.
Sure, I'll do that right now. So with regards to things that are abstract, it necessitates a mind because it invokes perceptions, ideas, and concepts, all of which require a mind. So obviously that mind is what's instantiating and imposing the very intelligibility itself with regards to all things, because you've already admitted that with regards to all things that are outside of our mind, they exist ontologically, irregards of ourself. So we're not the ones that's instantiating and imposing the very intelligibility, ontological intelligibility of all things. So that means there's some other mind that's doing it, and that mind is the mind of God.
I mean, I literally argued against that like 5 minutes ago, but yeah, okay, sure. You really got me on the thing I didn't say, like, at all.
Does your argument does it have a response to nominalism, like property nominalism, or does it just assume that nominalism is false and go from there?
Yeah, you did say it because you said that intelligibility is an abstract thing. Abstract things necessitate a mind.
Okay, well, I think you should answer Blitz's question.
What was the question?
Does your argument have any response to nominalism, such as property nominalism, or does it just assume it's false and go from there?
Nominalism. What do you mean by nominalism? What is that?
Nominalism is a philosophy. It's like an ontological position, I suppose. I guess it's also like a metaphysical position, but it's the position that if you're talking about property nominalism, then it's the idea that properties are merely like a kind of like a language game. They're not like a thing that have ontological status in themselves. If you're like a logical nominalist, then you think that logic is like a language game, that it's just like a way of naming things and talking about things in a way that's useful for communication rather than having, again, ontological status in itself. It's a form of it's an ontological position. It's a metaphysical position. But the point is it kind of rejects a lot of, depending on the type of nominalism, it'll reject ontological status for various things.
Oh, well, that just sounded like a lot of word salad to me. What I believe is simply that
That's hilarious.
all things
That's so funny.
is simply information. And with regards
Hey,
to
I'm sorry your script doesn't cover nominalism. I suggest that you should go look that up so that you can actually encounter and have real conversations with people instead of just reading off of whatever you're reading. Right? Because like I think what's cool about being a human being is that we can engage with each other about our own individual ideas without having to follow a script and making things like really weird and really uncomfortable for everybody involved, right? And telling other people what they believe, even though they may say otherwise. So I don't think you're gonna win a lot of hearts that way. But yeah, but you're the guy that's talked to hundreds of atheists online, so you tell me, And
he's never run into any nominalists?
Yeah, that surprises me. Because it's not like that advanced of a concept, I'd say. I mean, if you're in this space, at least it's going to come up, right? So I don't know. Anything else before we let you go, CT?
Yeah, I just want to say that you guys need to accept Jesus Christ as your Lord.
It's cute. Yeah, I remember when Jesus, when he was talking to the poor, and he was like, "So, what's your ontological position on like objects? Do you think they have properties within of themselves, or?" Yeah, I remember that. He was really big on.
And then Peter was like, no, don't you know, they're actually only abstract objects. There are no concrete objects.
Right. See, when I multiply this fish, I'm multiplying the abstract object of the fish.
I mean, multiplication is an abstract operation. Like 2 times 3, it's not concrete.
Yeah. Man, it's just sad. It's sad, CT. Like, go live your life. It's a Friday night, have some fun, meet some people. The whole script thing, you may make you feel good at the end of the day because, you're using a lot of big words. You get to talk about how cool your ideas are, but are you actually convincing people? I mean, I get it. It's convinced you, but like, how many times have you used it on people and have they been like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I guess I'm a Christian now. Like, come on. I don't think it works. At least you're not the first guy that's tried it on me and it still hasn't worked on me. But maybe again, I'm just one of those dumb atheists, right? So I don't know. Any other thoughts on that, Blitz?
Yeah, I would just say that if you're going to use words like ontological in an argument, you should know what nominalism is.
Yeah, really. I mean, I don't know. That's just like, I don't know. Again, I don't want to say it's like too advanced because we're talking about philosophy here, but it's like that is definitely a position about objects in the world. So if
one of the main positions.
Right.
Right.
Like it's, yeah, I don't know. Very weird. But yeah, I don't think a script had an account for that. But let's keep moving on, shall we? We have Gregory from Tennessee who wants to ask a question to you, Blitz. So Gregory from Tennessee, you are live on Truth Wanted. What's going on?
Hi, Dan. Actually, this is Gregory in Tennessee. Gregory from New York.
Okay, all right. My bad. Okay, ontologically though, you are.
Is anyone from anything?
Is anyone from anything? Yeah, that's the way we should do this.
That's great, and we should talk about outside of time later. But you, Dan, you know me from such community features as Meet the ACA on the Atheist Community of Discord server Tuesday evenings.
Yes, that is true. Shout outs to that. But what did you want to ask Blitz today?
My pal Dan, of course. And Dr. Blitz may know me from such things as introducing Planet Peterson to block universe theory.
Oh, lovely.
And what I wanted to ask Dr. Blitz this evening is about the fine-tuning argument that we get from presuppositionalist apologetics all the time, which I see several just gaping holes and glaring flaws in the fine-tuning argument right off the bat. It's one of the non-starters among these arguments. But also, atheists will go to great lengths and grant many things for the sake of the argument and get very much, I feel, in the weeds and take down minor points. So I wanted to know if Dr. Blitz thinks fine-tuning argument is just a non-starter right off the bat, or do we have to pick it apart in its details?
Generally speaking, I think it's a, and I've had this conversation a billion times, right? But generally speaking, I think that the fine-tuning argument relies on two kind of fundamental errors. The first being that, so just for those who don't know, the fine-tuning argument is roughly the idea that under the theistic proposition, a universe that is life permitting is at least not so improbable, and under a naturalistic interpretation of the world, a life permitting universe is wildly improbable. Now, there's two problems here. The first is that even beginning to assess the probability distribution of the naturalistic hypothesis requires knowing something about the way the universe could have otherwise been. And we have no idea how the universe could have otherwise been. So we have no way of assessing that probability space. It could be the case that our universe couldn't have been any other way, in which case the probability is 1, right? But of course, we don't know the other ways the universe could have been. We don't know the other possible ways. So we can't evaluate that probability, meaning that at best we should remain agnostic. But the second point is that regarding the theistic position, when you're comparing a theistic and a naturalistic worldview, oftentimes there's some underlying assumptions that are snuck under into the theistic position that are not snuck under into the naturalistic position, which just makes it so you're comparing apples and oranges. When theists talk about the naturalistic world as if where life is wildly improbable, they're talking about bare naturalism, where no extra assumptions are made except that the universe exists without a god. However, when they're talking about a theistic model of the world, they're talking about where the universe exists and God exists, and this God wants life to exist. And that's a key critical distinction, because if you assume that the God you're talking about wants life to exist, then of course it's probable that life will exist. But that would be like assuming that the universe is life permitting. Then of course it will permit life. So if you want to make the adequate or the proper comparison, you should really be comparing a bare, no properties God that we know nothing about. Maybe it wants life, maybe it doesn't want life, maybe it hates life, to a bare naturalistic world. Or you can compare a propertyful God that perhaps wants life and cares about life or whatever, to a universe, a naturalistic world with a whole bunch of other properties. Maybe it has a multiverse, which, you know, has a whole bunch of different constants in it, or maybe there's some like naturalistic teleology or something like that that actually cares about life for whatever reason. The point is you have to do an apples to apples comparison. So I think on those two grounds, the fact that we can't assess the probability distribution and the fact that often it's not an apples to apples comparison, I think basically makes the fine tuning fall apart.
There you go, Gregory. I couldn't say it any better, literally. So that's it. Oh, go ahead. I was interrupting you.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Dan. I was complimenting Dr. Blitz that he does a great steelman of the theistic position, which doesn't make it a better argument, really. But these fine-tuning arguments are often straw mans of science that seem to have things kind of backwards, like the analogy falls apart, the metaphor falls apart, say like a piano. Tuning it is the last step in its use, or before it can be used for its purpose. It must be tuned, and oftentimes this is done after delivery. Not only does the entire piano have to be finished, manufactured, and assembled and in place, now before we can play it, now at the last step before the purpose, we bring in the tuner, and he changes things. Whereas in the fine-tuning argument, they seem to imply that these values, or these whatever constants of physics, that whenever we measure them, they're always the same. They seem to present them as some kind of fundamentals without which, or if they were different, nothing could be, as if they preceded, the universe. So the whole analogy seems backwards to me. And if they're constants, they can't be changed. But if they're tuned, they must have been changed, because that's what tuning is. Tuning is changing it to a proper value from an improper one. So there's a couple of I see in their thinking.
The usage of the word tuning, and I just have to steelman the religious position here. The usage of the word tuning is more like setting a dial. Yeah. So they're imagining that God is thinking about how he wants to create the universe, and he has a whole bunch of different dials in front of him for the universe that he wants to create, and he sets these dials very, very precisely so that it makes life. That's the notion of tuning that they're referring to. Not like tuning it to make it better kind of thing, but tuning it to set it up in the correct way to begin with.
Yeah, deal with the parameters. It's a difference between probability versus likelihood, right? Which what's that, Gregory?
I'm sorry, I just said I had not thought about the metaphor in that sense. I always just thought of it as tuning a musical string to a precise mathematical vibration to give the desired result. But another part of the argument is they say if these constants were different, which doesn't make logical sense to me to phrase it like that, then life couldn't have been possible. But they have no way of knowing that. If the values could even be different, and if so, perhaps life would just evolve under those different conditions and be a different life. So the argument just becomes, if things were different, things wouldn't be the same.
Yeah, it really does boil down to that, which is obviously the big issue with fine-tuning stuff, right? How can you determine the likelihood of parameters if we don't know their likelihood, right? How can we say, like, oh, what's the likelihood of the event of life happening based on these parameters? Or it's beyond that. It's what's the likelihood of this parameter being in the universe, right? That would permit life versus other parameters in the universe that wouldn't permit life. Like, we have no way of knowing that, right? So it's kind of a moot point. But, sort of like with our previous caller, right? Apologists will often use the fine-tuning argument through a lot of big words and a lot of fancy sounding stuff to kind of make this case when it really doesn't get you anywhere. It doesn't tell you anything. And if there is a God, I'd hope we know more than just like, universal likelihoods of his existence. I'd hope we know like a little bit more concretely, shall we say, of his existence than just making probability arguments. But that's not in my best interest, I guess, to figure that out. That's for the apologists to know.
Yeah, there's a whole cottage industry in finding constants in the universe, which I always thought is very, very silly. But they never stop to wonder how fine-tuned were God's desires. He could have made electrons fall in love instead of people, but he chose to make the constants allow for humans rather than allow for just electrons with minds, or perhaps no physical universe at all. He could just make minds happen. He doesn't need a physical universe for it. So why is God's will so fine-tuned is the better question. Right.
Yeah, and why does he seems to think like a human a lot of times too, which is interesting for somebody that should be beyond our understanding and reasoning. I don't know. Seems likely that maybe it's more of a human construct than a universal one, but that's just my opinion. I don't know.
Okay, but what if we find aliens and they're like, "Oh yeah, you met Jesus, we did too." Then
that would be interesting. See,
I don't know. I might be sold.
Yeah, we've talked about that specific concept on this show before, right? If aliens came to us and like said, "Hey, what about this Jesus guy?" I think that should give you pause at least, right?
I saw a comic. It was or it was a meme or something, and it's like, "Oh yeah, like what did you do to Jesus when he came to your planet? You did what to him? We just gave him
really
cookies."
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, okay, like how come we didn't hear about Jesus from the Aborigines? You know what I mean? Like, why did he only come to this one specific part of the world? Is he just racist? Like, what's going on? Why does he only care about what's going on here?
It's called the Middle East. He was like trying to like pick the middle part, right?
Yeah. Trying to get the exact center. I don't know. Doesn't seem to make sense to me. But anyway, we're preaching to the choir here, I imagine, Gregory. So anything else you wanted to ask, Blitz, before we let you go?
Well, I agree that God seems to be very anthrocentric, and religion, being anthrocentric, put the earth at the center of the universe. And now we know that that's not so. And I would not say, oh, yes, the universe is so fine-tuned and made by God for life that you can teleport me anywhere in the universe, and I'm happy with that random choice. Even if you were to limit it to like our biosphere of the Earth, from the outer atmosphere to the core of the planet, would you want to be teleported randomly to any of those spots? I would not. Or even if I said, okay, I teleport you randomly to any point on the surface of the planet, which as far as we know is the only habitable part of our entire universe, I mean, for our life forms, I wouldn't take that bet, because I'll probably be in the middle of the ocean and get eaten by something red in tooth, and probably not claw, but red in tooth in the middle of the ocean. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for your takedowns of the fine-tuning argument. I agree with you 100%. And, come to the after show. There will be an after show on the ACD right after the show.
We'll see how tired I am.
Yeah, I to be clear, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it tonight either, Gregory. But you know what? Thanks for calling. I do appreciate you contributing to the conversation, and wish you well on that. We do have some open lines right now, folks. I saw somebody's trying to call in earlier, and then they stopped, and I wonder why. Come back, come call in. We still have a couple minutes left. If not, we can wrap things up just a few minutes early. I'm sure a Blitz would appreciate that, and I know I would too. Folks, I got to tell you guys, I was originally planning to do another show next week, but I think I'm just too busy in my personal life right now. As you guys know, I'm getting married in about 2 weeks now, kind of crazy. And so I'm going to be gone for a little bit to do that, and also go on my honeymoon. I am going to Japan, which will be really great for a couple weeks. So show the other hosts some love while I'm gone. Okay, please represent and support them, because I'm going to be probably out for the next couple weeks here. But I'll tell you all about my travels, as soon as I get back, and it should be a pretty good time. But before we sort of wrap things up, I do want to give a special thanks to Dr. Blitz for being on the program with us tonight. Blitz, thanks so much. This was a very fun show.
Yeah, it's been a delight to be here.
And if people want to find you out more, find more about you, my words are not great tonight. I don't know what's happening. But anyway, if they want to see more of your stuff, where should they go?
Well, your best bet is TikTok. I know not a lot of people love that. It's the same name, Dr. Blitz or blitzphd. Depending on which one you type in, you'll find me. I'm the only big creator with Blitz in his name. But if you don't like TikTok, I do have a YouTube channel with the same name. And I post most of the same stuff there. I just kind of leave out some of the the stuff that perhaps isn't very well suited to TikTok. But I do multi-stream to both TikTok and YouTube. So you can watch me do call-in debates there as well.
Right on. And we have another super chat that I need to read here. It is from Connor K9, who gave $5 and said, "The ontological argument is awful. I also am a normal human being who is not impressed with this logic. It is unintuitive and lacks any true substance." And yeah, I say this, folks, how many times have I said this? You can be right and you can be convincing, not the same thing, right? Not the same thing. If this guy's right and he wants to convert us to, his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the format has got to change, right? It's 2025 here. It's got to be accessible. Okay, if you can't put it into TikTok, it's not worth saying. That's what they say in physics too.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. All the time they're talking about that. But on that note, I also, again, just want to give a shout out to we got another super chat actually from Miranda Rensberger, who gave $10 and said, "Congratulations, Dan. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. I will be enjoying my time off, not just from the show, but of course from work and everything. Because let me tell you something. I hope I never get married again. Not just for the fact that, I love my fiance and stuff, but man, wedding planning is a bitch. Okay, it is not fun. It's not fun.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
So it's been a thing. But I have had such a great conversation with you tonight, Blitz. Thanks so much for being on here. I also need to thank again the backup hosts for hanging out and doing their thing. Thanks so much, AJ, for being there, and Kelly.
Sure thing. I was just in the right place at the right time. Got to get Kelly off the backup host seat. Yeah, I've been doing a lot of stepping in to save the day lately. So yeah. Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah, and we appreciate you all the more for that. Sure. I also want to thank Kelly as well. I don't know if we can get him in the one-up because we're kind of doing a different setup tonight, but he's in our hearts as usual. If you want to talk to Kelly, he will probably be in the after show, which is happening right afterwards. So check the link to that if you want to go to the Discord and talk to some people. Just a reminder, the prompt for this week is combine 2 conspiracy theories to make the ultimate conspiracy theory. Leave a comment on the video and your comment might be read on next week's episode. And of course, if you tune in at the beginning, you will hear those top 3 answers. Before we head out for tonight, Blitz, you got any words of wisdom for us? Words of wisdom.
Don't be dumb, read more.
I like that. That's a good one. Folks, don't be dumb, read more. I'm Objectively Dan. This is Truth Wanted. Remember to always keep wanting the truth, and we'll see you next time.
Watch the non-profits and join the hosts in the live chat. Visit tiny.cc/ytnp.